Surprisingly, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned as an entrepreneur is about mindset. It wasn't about how to run a business, how to be a leader, how to, do marketing or X, Y, and Z. It was about how to improve my mindset. And this is what changed my life. This is what my first mentor told me that changed everything for me. Bob Proctor. He said, the outside is a reflection of the inside, and until you change the inside, the outside cannot change. So I was like, what does it mean by the inside, right? Because nothing was working for me, and I was meditating, I was journaling, I was reading books, I was eating right, I was working out, but nothing was changing. I was still not earning money, I was still failing, I was still not doing how I knew I could be doing. And he made me realize that I was only trying to change the outside instead of the inside. And this is what a lot of people don't understand, right? They want to change the partner, they want to change the job, they want to change their circumstances, where they live, how they look, but they don't realize that the outside is just a reflection of what's going on inside. Meaning, once you change the way you look at something, what you're looking at will change, right? You and I could be looking at the same thing, and you could be thinking, man, that's bad, that sucks, that's not gonna work out. And for me, I could be thinking, wow, that's an opportunity, that's a win, I'm grateful for that, because now it gets me stronger, or now I can learn more, or now I can gain more experience, right? So I always tell people, there's no such thing as good or bad, positive or negative. Everything just is. We make it what it is based on the thoughts that we choose to think about. Think about it. You don't look bad. You think you look bad, right? The economy is not against you. You think it's against you. You don't suck at your job. You think you suck at your job. Therefore, the universe, the outside, the world has no other choice other than to give you what you're thinking about, right? This is a game changer, because you got to realize that you have the power, you have the control to do and be anything that you want to be. And guess what? It's up to you. I can't tell you what you can be. That's only what you can tell yourself, right? Most people wait to see the bank account to see if they can get it done. Most people look at their physique to see if it's something that it can be accomplished or they can wear. Most people look at their partner to see if, they can do whatever it is that you want to think about. It always goes back to the way you're thinking, because the way you think is the way you feel, and how you feel is how you act, and how you act is what you attract. It all goes back to your thought, right? Once again, there's no such thing as good or bad, positive or negative. Everything just is. We make it what it is based on the thoughts that we choose to think about, right? It's the yin and the yang. The light cannot exist without the dark. The up cannot exist without the down. The cold cannot exist without the hot. It's the yin and the yang. And the thing is, what are you focusing on? Because if you know that everything has both the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, what are you focusing on? Because if you're focusing on the negative, you have no other choice other than to attract negative. But if you focus on the positive, you have no other choice than to attract positive. And this is what a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand. They want to grind, they want to do the work, they stay up all night, and they're doing so much, but they still don't have the belief that they can get it done. They still have the doubt, they have the worry, they have the fear. But they're taking so much action, and nothing's gonna happen until the way they're thinking changes. And yeah, you can have some wins here and there, but ultimately you're gonna revert back to your self-image, to the image that you have inside. Am I a winner? Am I a loser? Am I ugly? Am I pretty? Am I able? Am I not able? Whatever it is that you're thinking about, it always goes back to your inner dialogue, the way that you see yourself, the way that you feel about yourself. That is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned about being an entrepreneur. Me coming from nothing, being first generation Mexican American, I got separated from both my parents at 10 years old. I grew up so poor. We literally had to go behind, uh, gas stations, Walmarts, to dig in the trash cans just to eat. And it's crazy to even think about, because when Bob said the outside is a reflection of the inside, and until you change the inside, the outside cannot change, he made me realize that I had a lot of negative paradigms. I had a lot of money paradigms that were holding me back, and I wanted abundance, yet I had scarcity in my mindset. I could not see me doing that. And when he said that, I said, I need whatever it is that you're talking about. And it was a mentorship. And guess what? I had been losing for about a year, lost all my money. I was rock bottom. I ended up at the hospital with a heart condition. My grandmother raised me after I lost my parents. She ended up passing away, and it hurt me as if I lost my own mother, because she was my mother. And it was very tough. And I was in a position where I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I did not know what to do. I would go to sleep depressed. I would go to sleep crying. It was, and I'm a veteran. I did 5 years. I served for this country, and you can say, yeah, I was tough and everything, but man, being an entrepreneur in the beginning whooped my ass, and it was very difficult. And so it was at that moment that I also learned something else from my first mentor, Bob Proctor. He said, because I didn't have the money, right? I had $300 in my bank account. His mentorship was $7,500, and at that point, the most I had ever earned was $30,000, which was in the service. It was when I was serving in the military. And so when he said it was $7,500, I was like, oh shit, I don't have that kind of money. Like, that's wow. Like, that was a lot for me back then. And he said something else that changed my life. He said, nothing happens until you make a decision. Nothing changes until you make a decision. So I was like, I gotta make a decision, right? So he said, once you make a decision, the money, the people, the circumstances, the scenarios will all line up in your favor to give you that which you're asking for, with that which you made a decision to get. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do it. I said, I don't know where I'm gonna get the 7,500, but I'm gonna do it. And within a couple of days, I ended up pulling the trigger, and I made it happen. And from that moment forward, it changed my life forever, because I started working on myself. I started working on the inside, which dictates the outside. Why do I think the way I think? Why do I feel the way I feel? Why do I act the way I act? Because how I act is what I attract, and it goes back to the way that I think, because how I think is how I feel, and how I feel is how I act, and how I act is what I attract from this universe. And think about it. Why do you like the things that you like? Because you've been programmed like that through your parents, through the environment. And a lot of times we don't make the conscious choice to do the things that we do. We just do them because it just feels right, or we're just used to it, or our parents used to do it, or our siblings used to do it. And so when you start working on yourself, you take your power back, because you realize that you are in control, and you're not a victim to this reality. You're not a victim to anything. And for me, being first generation Mexican American, having no silver spoon, being separated from my parents at 10 years old, I went through a lot. And now moving forward, I've built 3 different companies that turned, over multiple 6 figures. And now I teach people how to get funding, how to leverage credit, how to fix their credit. And I got certified to become a mindset coach under Bob Proctor, and I paid him $33,000 on top of the $7,500. And I've spent over $150K in just mentorships, right? I drive a Tesla that drives by itself. I'm not driving right now, but it drives by itself. It's a $100,000 vehicle, and I'm just living the life that I really wanted to live. And it all started with me working on myself, right? Because ultimately, who cares about the cars? Who cares about the money? Who cares about the outside? All that matters is how you're feeling inside, right? Are you happy with yourself? Are you happy whenever no one's seeing you, when you're not alone, with your health, with your mental health, with your mental choices? This is something that nothing and no one can do for you. You can only do it yourself, because if you're waiting for your partner to make you feel better, for the government to make you feel better, if you're waiting for your boss, for your siblings, for your parents, I mean, you're always gonna be depending on someone. And if it doesn't happen the way that you think, you're gonna be crumbled, you're gonna crush. And the thing with life is always gonna be up and down, and it's a roller coaster. So it's seasons, meaning you're not always gonna be winning, but you're not always gonna be losing. And you have to realize that whenever you're losing, you have to stay in control and work on what you can work on, because all you can control is how you think and how you feel and how you act. You can't control other people. You can't control the government. You can't control the weather. You can't control animals. You can't control anything else besides yourself. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I learned, because it set me free once I realized, damn, I just gotta work on myself and everything else will follow. Because when you get better, things get better. When you improve, things improve. That's the way it works. It all starts with you. Don't depend on someone to make you happy. Make yourself happy by doing the things you said you were gonna do, and working on yourself one day at a time. Don't get overwhelmed trying to make the hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars. Just work on yourself one day at a time. Improve your mindset, and then start stacking those wins each and every day. And by the time you know, you're gonna be a whole different person. Before I went to the military, when I signed up, I was 18 years old, and I did not speak any English. I did not speak any English when I signed up for the military, and I was 18 years old, and I got shipped out of San Antonio into Chicago for boot camp. And I was shocked by the culture of like just needing to speak English. And it was all sorts of ethnicities. And where I'm from, the Valley, everyone would just speak Spanish. Even my teachers, coaches, everyone would just speak Spanish because it's a border town. So it really woke me up when I went over there, and I had to work on myself. I had to work on my self-image. I had to work on my language. I had to work on the way that I spoke and that I carried myself. And so I had to create a new self-image about myself. And then once I got out of the military, I went to pre-med, and I had to create a new self-image, which was working on myself. Even though I didn't see it as mindset, once I became aware of how important it is to work on yourself, I realized, damn, I've been working on myself, but I didn't know what I was doing. And now I became aware of what I was doing. The power of words, the power of belief, the power of your mindset really create your reality. Because once again, remember, there's no such thing as good or bad, positive or negative. Everything just is. We make it what it is based on the thoughts that we choose to think about. So the big question is, what are you thinking about? Whenever you're trying to open up the business or run the business or grow your business, what are you thinking about? Do you think it's gonna go well for you, or you think it's gonna fail? Do you think you're gonna crush it, or you think it's gonna crush you? Do you think people are gonna love you, or people are gonna embarrass you and talk you down? That's where it all starts, in your mind, once again, because the way you think is how you feel, and how you feel is how you act, and how you act is what you attract. It all goes back to the way that you think. So if you know that, then you need to go inside and realize, what am I thinking about, and why am I thinking like this, and how can I change the way that I think?